We are officially 15 days away from the start of Houston Texans training camp. So today, John and I are going to continue our training camp preview with a look at the linebacker unit.
Let's get it.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to this Hump Day episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every other day as of right now.
Ain't going to be too much longer.
We'll kick it back off soon every day in a little bit, but thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. All we ask, 3 favors: subscribe, like, and comment. If you want to get a little extra special, come on back to listen and watch the Locked On Texans podcast. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers once again, and thank you to all of our returning listeners coming back to continue to listen or watch Cody and I talk Texans. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, Texans credentialed media member, Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Guys, you can make every sports moment more. Playoffs are over with. I understand that, but the sports don't necessarily stop sporting. I mean, they're not sporting like we want them to. However, this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a bonus or a boost daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Cody, take us away.
And on this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans, John and I are going to continue our training camp position previews because we are officially 15 days away from the start of training camp, which basically means we're 15 days away from the unofficial start of the 2024 season. John, I don't know about you, but I'm sitting here thinking to myself, where in the world did the offseason go? Because it seemed like just yesterday we were sitting here talking about the Houston Texans and them ending off the 2023 campaign, 10 wins, playoff victory. Now we about to start up with another season for your Houston Texans. Don't know about you guys, but I am excited. Today we're going to highlight the linebacking core, and just like we did for the safety unit, we're going to close out this installment looking at some players who could be on the bubble entering training camp. In the middle of the show, we're going to actually take a look at some of the biggest storylines revolving this position group. But I do want to get this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans kicked off by grading the Houston Texans linebacking core, just to give you guys a quick rundown of what the Houston Texans are working with. Christian Harris, Azeez Al-Shaair, Henry To'oTo'o are your projected 3 starters at that position. You also have Jacoby Phillips, Del'Shawn Phillips, Neville Hewitt, and of course your 2 rookies, Jamal Hill and Max Tooley. John, before I give my grade, because I went first on yesterday, do you want to be the first one to grade this linebacker unit as of right now?
Yeah. So I think for me, I'm going to give him a B. First off, let me say I love what Blake Cashman did for Houston last year.
Yes, sir.
But you're looking at a nearly 500 snap difference between Azeez and Blake, and that's a 500 snap upgrade between Azeez and Blake. So, I'm looking at in 17 games for linebackers playing in 80% of the defensive snaps, Azeez only allowed 280 yards in coverage, give or take. That was 3rd in the league, right under 70% of his passes allowed, 13th in the NFL, and top 10 in the league in yards per catch allowed with 8.3. Not to mention he plays well downhill. Has very good gap discipline, for the linebackers. Again, 80% of the defensive snaps played, and that's the biggest difference when you look at Azeez and Blake Cashman. Most of all, I think he will be asked to do the same thing with the same similar supporting cast as his best year last year in Tennessee. So there isn't for me, an expectation for him to do things that he isn't comfortable with. Similar D-line presence, of course, with Autry. I played with him in Tennessee, reuniting with Coach DeMeco Ryans. I like that upgrade for Houston from Blake Cashman to Azeez Al-Shaair. Of course, Christian Harris already on the roster. And when I look at Christian Harris, a guy who I've raved about, especially considering closing out the year, I'm looking for that year 3 jump. I think Harris and Al-Shaair will be so interchangeable with one another, right? Like you mentioned the quote-unquote starters. Well, Houston ran about nearly 75% 4-2-5 defense last year. That is nickel defense, to put it simple. So I don't think there's gonna be like, a base, we're gonna look at starter here, starter there, third starter. I think we're gonna see majority of those snaps at linebacker. We're gonna see Azeez out there and Christian Harris out there. Those guys are going to be very interchangeable, and they do a lot of the similar things very well. So the creativity on how you maybe either want to create pressure or disguise some of your looks, I think is going to help this team out from a linebacker standpoint. I think Azeez is going to be great for Houston. But after the top 2 dogs, so now you have somewhat of a clone copy of Christian Harris and rookie Jamal Hill. And maybe not as highly scouted, but former safety, transitioned to linebacker his last season or 2 at Oregon. Great cover skills, but he's going to need to get coached up, right? So how many snaps can you expect for him to play? You have questionable vets in Delshon Phillips, who started 2 games in 4 years and has been utilized as a special teamer mainly, along with Neville Hewitt, who has been out on the field a total of 25 defensive snaps in the last 2 seasons. And again, heavily featured special teamers. Jacob Phillips, who's been out for a year. That leaves a lot on the shoulders of Henry Toto in his second year. Now, Jacob Phillips, the last time we saw him play, he did a very good job. I think he was in Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken. Very good opportunity for him to play both special teams and linebackers. And to be quite frank, that third quote-unquote linebacker will be looked to play a lot of special teams. So he's very familiar with that role and getting some good burn, playing some good snaps at linebacker. But I would say the edge right now goes to the guy who just came off a rookie year, going into his sophomore year, having an opportunity to learn more, to be a better player at that position in HT, because I don't think Jamal Hill will be ready to take over from Henry, or maybe not even some of the vets in front of him. I think it's going to be a very good project that will need to be coached up. Max Tooley as well. Some of those young guys, special teams, right? Maybe practice squad, but outside the top 2 guys, and those top 2 guys can really make this defense special, no doubt about it. Outside of those guys, there's some questions there that when we get to training camp, we're going to be like, okay, well, who's going to be fighting for a 3rd and 4th spot between that linebacker group? But I think Azeez has done enough based off last year and his ability to play very well under D'Amico. I like how he and Christian Harris can potentially match with one another. I think that's why I'm going to be giving Houston a B for their linebacker group.
I'm not going to lie to you. When I was looking at how I was going to grade them, I kind of wanted to give them an incomplete because we are so high on the top 2 guys.
That is fair.
We so high on the top 2 guys. I mean, everything that I wrote about Christian Harris and Azeez, John, you already said it. I'm not about to allude to it. I think the only other thing that I would add to Azeez is the fact that I've always considered him, especially looking at what he did with the Tennessee Titans last year, I consider him one of the most underrated players in the league. I mean, he had a career year recording 163 tackles, which was 5th in the league. Yeah. So you look at it from a standpoint, you already know who you got from those two guys. But John, I go back to something that I've heard you talked about time and time again. Every time we talk about this position group throughout this whole entire offseason, what do you have after Harris and Azeez? And that is where I have the biggest concern. And of course, just like you just said, it's going to fall on the shoulders of Henry To'oTo'o. You guys heard the interview that I had with Azeez last week, and he talked about how he appreciate Henry T basically just sticking through his rookie season going through the struggles, and he feels that he's going to come back better in year 2. And that's very important because we talked about it. Others, our colleagues have talked about it. The listeners have talked about it in the comment section on Twitter. We all thought highly of Henry To'oTo'o coming into his rookie season. He began his rookie season getting a lot of snaps, but every single week it got less and less and less, to the point by the time the 2023 season was over, the only time we saw him was on special teams. And I'm not going to knock that young man for it, because just like I said last week, and I'm going to repeat it here again, you have to give these young guys time to thrive, whether they're drafted with the first overall pick or they're Mr. Irrelevant. These young men needs to have time to learn the game and develop their skill set, their mind, and get adjusted to the speed in order to be the guy that we thought they was going to be coming into the league. But even outside of Henry T, John, I don't really know what to expect from Jamal Hill or Max Tooley. Both of those guys look pretty decent throughout rookie minicamp, OTAs, mandatory minicamp. However, all of that's going to change when they start ramping up during training camp, especially when things start being physical. And look, I'm going to talk about it in the second segment. I am a little bit higher on Max Tooley than I was when they first signed him as an undrafted free agent after the 2024 draft. But literally, there are a lot of questions surrounding this position group, to the point I'm going to say this. Yesterday, we talked a lot about, the makeup of the safety unit. And depending on what takes place through our training camp, they're going to spend the rest of their money improving that position group. I can see Coach D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio doing the same exact thing for this linebacker unit, especially considering that linebacker is a position that your head coach already played at the highest level as well.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. And I think with all of these, outside of quarterback, receiver, offensive line, I think you can make a case for several position groups where, the conversation will be had. Okay, well, they got the money to spend, and they're going to be players out there, whether they're already available or you got guys that are going to get cut. I believe I don't want to say you guys, but I believe Houston will coach up those young guys. I guess the concern is you can coach them up, right? But will they be ready?
Yeah, I was about to say, do they have the patience? Because this isn't a quote-unquote developmental throwaway. We just trying to get to a wild card spot season.
Right. And that's what it comes down to. I think another important thing for us to look at when we look at the biggest storylines for the linebacker group is how can they get the most out of who they already have on the roster. So we're going to talk about the biggest storylines for the linebacker group on the other side of the break. Today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I got something I want to tell you guys, because I've got caught up in it a lot of times where I'm just scrolling on Instagram and I'm looking at other people's cars and I'm like, man, I really wish I had that car. Got a perfectly good working car outside. But what I've come to understand is comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to start envying other people's lives. It may look all together on their Instagram, but in reality, who knows what they have going on. I think one of the best things about therapy is therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have. You can also start living your best life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try, guys. Man, don't get caught up in everybody else's life. Don't get caught up in what everybody else has going on. BetterHelp can help you get to what you are looking for in life. The best part about it is it's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And guys, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing, start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/locked-on today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. 15 days away, Cody.
15. Which is the new number of rookie Houston Rockets rookie Reed Shepherd, by the way, had an opportunity to be at his introductory press conference. Just want to throw that out there. Number 15
days. 15, and in 15 days, Houston gonna be 15 degrees hotter.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but unfortunately,
I think right now for this team, nothing is as hot as some of the preseason storylines. We've seen the MVP talks. We've seen the best offense in the NFL. We've seen a lot of different storylines that Houston could potentially, bring to fruition. But the smaller storylines will help this team get to the promised land. So let's stick with our trend and look at the storylines for the linebacker group.
For me, I'm looking at undrafted free agent rookie linebacker Max Tooley, plain and simple. John, in the first segment, I said at first when the Houston Texans brought him in, I wasn't too high on the signing. And look, I understand only so many players get an opportunity to hear their name called. But even if you were brought in as an undrafted free agent, there's still that one little part of me to always say, well, why did you go undrafted? Why didn't the Houston Texans find it important to draft you during the 7th round draft? And if not the Houston Texans, other teams. And it could be for a variety of reasons. So when Max came in, didn't really think too much of it. John, I remember when we first talked about, the rookie class in its entirety, I say Max Tooley is probably somebody that you throw on special teams. And that's when the joke started. You just want to throw everybody on special teams. But after looking at him doing OTAs and mandatory minicamp, especially mandatory minicamp, I looked at that young man and I said, if he continues to develop and continues to learn from the veterans and from the head coach, that young man has an opportunity to get some valuable snaps for this organization through his rookie season. And not only that, when you take a look at training camp, I do wonder whether or not he can shake up the depth, because just like we just mentioned, after your main two linebackers, Harris and Azeez, who's going to take the helm as linebacker number 3 or linebacker number 4, just so you can add a little bit more, just so you can have more options to choose, rather if somebody goes through an injury, whether if somebody's really not getting it done. And when I look at Max Tooley, I look at a guy who can definitely give you something in both in pass coverage and at stopping the run, but more so in pass coverage, because John, once again, we have talked a lot about the Houston Texans passing defense. You made a very good point on yesterday. Yes, I said a lot about, the defensive backfield and their deficiencies playing a big role in the Houston Texans struggling in pass coverage. You said you're looking at that second level because they did not look good last year as well. You look at Max Tooley, this young man can make plays on the ball. In 6 seasons at BYU, 7 interceptions, 10 pass deflections, 3 in 2022, which was a career season for that young man. Max Tooley can definitely add value to the Houston Texans linebacker unit. And I'm not about to sit here and say that he's going to overtake Henry To'oTo'o, but I do believe things get very interesting if we continue to see Henry T struggle during training camp, and you have somebody like Max Tooley making plays on the ball just like he did in mandatory minicamp, coming away with an interception. Even though it did come from Davis Mills, an interception as a undrafted rookie free agent is still an interception.
Yeah, I think my biggest storylines for me is just, for one, can the Houston linebacking core cut down on some of that yak yard they allowed last year?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going based off of PFF's numbers, so give or take. But between Christian Harris and HT, they allowed nearly 700 yards yak. 700 yak yards.
That's crazy.
Hey,
how much of that comes from that Cleveland Browns game on Christmas Eve alone?
So for Christian Harris, his biggest on the year was that Jacksonville game.
Mm-hmm.
The New York Jets game when they were getting killed by crossing routes. The Tennessee game, and that's one of those games where I'm not sure, but I mean they do need to get better with not allowing as many yak yards.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I think maybe a bigger storyline for that position is just Christian Harris being who we believe he can be, right? I think for me, Christian Harris is going to be on my watch list, like how I was eager to watch Dameon Pierce going into last offseason, going to be training camp season. I'm going to be eager to watch Christian Harris this year because I believe he can be special for Houston. And I think that, again, the pairing of him and Azeez just unlocking the fullness of his potential for 17 games, right? Or, I mean, you got to factor in injuries, knick-knack injuries. So let's just say, for the sake of the argument, 13, 14 games. I think that's still a pretty good year for a player in the NFL. Just being the best he can be, right? He is a part of that 2022 draft class. The draft class, I believe, can really unlock this team for them to get over the hump and be Super Bowl champions, or at least get to the big dance. Excuse me. That's the biggest storyline.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that Derek Stingley is going to be a Texan in the future. He continues playing like he's going to be playing. We've already talked about the 2023 draft class. Nico Collins from the 2021 draft class just got paid. Davis Mills helped save your franchise, so his job is done. I wouldn't be shocked if Davis Mills gets a coaching job from Houston in the future, maybe a decade or so.
I'm about to say this soon.
No. He may decide to say, hey, man, I did what I had to do. I'm ready to kick back and relax and coach. But the 22 draft class got some players in it that we believe can be special.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Harris, I think, is one of them. He has to put it all together. He's going to be going into year 2 under DeMeco Ryans and Matt Burke. That is a player. When I look at these storylines, we can get caught up in some of the smaller ones because I like what you said. Undrafted guy, right? I would even throw Jamal Hill in that mix, 6th-round
I was
pick
thinking about him too.
out of Oregon. You know, what's one of these young guys can really compete with each other and compete with somebody that will, be over them, some of those vets. Those are very good storylines.
Mm-hmm.
But these storylines, Christian Harris, can you be this team's Fred Warner? Listen, guys, I love sports. Cody, you love sports?
Yes, sir.
Of course you do. You wouldn't be talking Texans with me if you didn't. I love sports so much. I never want them to stop. I mean, I'm getting anxious right now for football season. We are 2.5 weeks away from training camp. The preseason kicks off in about 3 weeks. I'm excited, but as the sports wind down, we're getting fewer sports. The sports are not sporting like I want them to. However, FanDuel lets me keep sports going whenever I want to, and they're letting you do the same. All you got to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a bonus or boost daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the MLB.
Had an opportunity to watch you, start developing a relationship with Christian Harris doing OTAs and mandatory minicamp. What can you share about your, time with Christian Harris as of right now? And does it, matter in a sense where you and Christian Harris line up on the field together?
Yeah, so it's cool because, Christian, I remember it was an interview, I think, or something I saw with DeMeco where he was last year. He was saying, like, Christian Harris was, like, the most explosive linebacker he's ever coached. And I'm sitting there, like, really? Like, it kind of, because to me, that was a bold statement to make, just in the sense of, like, obviously the guys that he's coached. And so I'm like, to me, it was always, Dre Greenlaw, like, pound for pound, like me, Dre, and Fred would talk about it all the time. Like, Dre was just in that aspect of just like explosiveness. Like it was Dre. When he said that, it was like, dang, like it kind of like I'm like, okay, I'm watching it to like really like see what this is about. So now being here and being with them, obviously he's always looked up to me, Dre, Fred, just because that's the game that he studied and watched. And man, like explosive. Like he literally is literally that, explosive as heck. And I think that's just like something I try to get through his head because he always tells me, man, I'm trying to get like you. I'm trying to get like you. I'm like, listen, bro, you trying. Like you have all the ability to maximize this and take it as far as you want. Now I'm here to help you just lock this in because the physical, I don't think he don't need to touch another weight. He don't need to do nothing. He's strong enough, fast enough. So it's like for him, just which I'm really really happy that I'm able to work with him, just because he reminds me a lot of myself, just from like where his mental is. Sometimes he used to, like when me and Dre used to be younger, kind of had that loose screw. Where you need that loose screw, but gotta be able to like find a balance between being amped up but also being locked in. And so I think me obviously being in my 6th year now and have already overcome that aspect of my emotions and my career, being able to help him lock that in, because I think the sky's the limit for him. I really do like our group, talk about Henry as well. I really like Henry a lot, just like obviously coming in as a rookie and the situations that he was put in. I think it's just a lot to ask for as a rookie to run the show. And I think for the time that he was in there, he did a really good job. So, I know that they both are very like, oh man, like try to like walk light and be very humble. Yeah, but I let them know, like, man, you got to have some confidence about you. And listen, I can show you clips of me and Dre and Fred doing a lot of bad things that we probably should have been doing on the field. Like, so it happened. You're going to make mistakes, but, just feed off of that confidence and keep working your butt off, and you'll get all the things that you want.
That was Azeez Al-Shaair. As some of you guys, majority of you guys know, had an opportunity to talk to him last week about several different topics. And John, I just wanted to play that clip again on what he had to say about Christian Harris and Henry T, because one, we're talking about the linebackers today, but everything that he said just went perfectly with everything that we talked about. But, continuing on with the show, just want to really quick just look at players who are on the bubble entering training camp. For me, I'm just going to keep it quick. The one player that I'm looking at on the bubble during training camp is Henry To'oTo'o. And when I say on the bubble, I'm not saying that he's not going to make the 53-man roster. I'm looking at he's on the bubble as to whether or not he's going to have a very important role for this organization in 2024. Plain and simple. If he goes out there and perform in training camp and be the guy that we thought we was getting last year, then he is definitely going to be.
Who do we think we were getting from a 5th-round linebacker from Alabama? Who do we think we was getting?
To be honest with you, and I know you're gonna look at me crazy.
I'm about to. I know I am. Now hold on.
But I thought we was getting somebody that would end up playing more snaps and playing a more important role than Blake Cashman. I understand Blake Cashman balled out, but if we go back to last season, we go back 365 days ago, nobody saw this coming out of Blake Cashman. Nobody saw this coming out of Blake Cashman. As a matter of fact,
I don't think we necessarily saw Henry. No disrespect to the young man, of course. But what I mean,
I did. I'm not gonna lie, I did.
Okay,
because because you was playing next to Christian Harris, and around that time we started seeing the trajectory. Okay, Christian might be something special. You playing under DeMeco Ryans. You basically came off your best season at Alabama. Like, I'm not about to say that I thought I was gonna get like an all-pro linebacker or something like that, but right. I thought for sure like he was going to be one of those guys that's like, oh, he's definitely going to be the foundation cornerstone. 365 days later, I'm like, look, I would be surprised if we were looking at him being on special teams for majority of his second season.
I think going into last year, the expectations were not there. And the season they started to curve to
that is there. True.
And with those expectations, you got to go with the better guy. And in that situation, it was a vet. Christian Harris, Denzel Perryman was on his team last year. They also brought in two other vet linebackers. Please forgive me. I can't remember their names.
Christian Kersey was still on. Well, was he still on the team at the time?
At 365 days ago, he was.
Okay, cool. Yeah, he was.
I think he practiced that first week of training camp. Then
the first 2 weeks got injured.
Held him out.
And then they cut him. Then he retired.
I don't know, man. I don't think I necessarily had big expectations for Henry, and I think going into this year, I have bigger expectations for him because of course, you got another year. You got your first year out the way, and you're getting another camp under your belt, right? And so now you look to take some of those learning lessons that you got last year, work on those mistakes. Athletically, he's gifted, of course. I mean, you don't make it to the NFL if you're not athletically gifted. But I don't know what we thought we was getting. I don't know about all that, man. But let me tell you something. I think I don't know how much longer Neville Hewitt has as the Houston Texan. One of these young guys, because we look at the linebacker group. We're looking at a couple guys for sure, special teamers. One of those young guys can come potentially take that spot. I like Jamal Hill.
Both of them, because Jamal Hill and Max Tooley, they provide you something that was missing in that linebacker unit last year, and that's their ability to cover, especially Jamal Hill, DB to linebacker.
We based off college, yes, but again, Henry was a 5th round pick. Jamal Hill is a 6th round pick. Max Tooley is an undrafted. Once these guys get to the NFL level, the speed changes, schemes changes, assignments changes. And so, like the safety unit, I think more so with the linebacker unit, you got your top 2 guys. After that, it's looking slim for Houston based off of we just simply don't know yet. But we're 15 days away from finding out.
And let me clarify this, because I know people got selective hearing. On the bubble for this conversation, when I said Henry T did not mean not making a 53-man roster. He's going to be on the roster. I'm saying on the bubble in terms of his role, because I could see him playing a vital role for this team, or unfortunately repeating what we saw during his rookie season, where you look up and the only time he's touching the field is on special teams. I think a lot is with this position group, a lot is riding on the development of Henry To'oTo'o.
I'm not mad at that. And the top 2 dogs staying healthy for majority, if not all, of the season. Thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Do me a favor and give me a follow on social media, Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, CotyDavis_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.